welcome to Mr. Meter Podcast. Hello, this is Mr. Meter and let's say Ali Kashani and you are listening to the Mr. Meter Podcast. Here we talk about electricity, generation, transmission and distribution grids, the future of power grids, industrial equipment utilized and the crisis in which many places in the world are facing right now. I hope that we can provide you with good information and data on the mentioned topics. Keep in mind that the information which is provided is aimed for both non-expert and expert people, and I will try to explain words and expressions in a way that everyone can relate and understand. As for myself, I have more than 12 years of professional experience in product management, technology development in energy industry, and have worked on smart meters, industrial modems, telecommunication and industrial protocols, MDM systems and AMI infrastructure. Also, in the past years, I've worked closely with governmental organizations like Energy Ministry, transmission and distribution companies in analysis and design of monitoring and measurement systems. Well, today, as for our first episode, we are going to talk about a very serious issue in the electricity industry, the power crisis. This includes both shortage and overload. Believe it or not, even power overload has become a big problem in some countries. We are going to give answers to these questions. Are we really going towards a global crisis or a global leap? Which countries have actually power shortage problems and which have overload problems? What is the solution? Generating more power, managing consumptions, both leave Earth for good. And we are going to cover all this in a very simple and real way. Look, the power shortage, as the word defines it, is simply lack of enough power and has a definition which is both simple and scientific. The need for power shall exceed the amount produced. People, industries, businesses all need more power, but the existing power plants or grid cannot provide it. That's what causes the power shortage. What is the result? Voltage swells, area blackouts, or scheduled blackouts, which is called load shedding. Keep in mind that this is not only for countries with poor economy. Even industrial countries face it right now as we speak. What are the reasons? Population growth, global warming, which means using more cooling systems, the development of more data centers and factories, electric vehicles, which is a trend nowadays, and old infrastructures. All these get together and create this crisis. Now let's delve into the part where we are going to talk about which countries are currently in power crisis, meaning power shortage. South Africa is one of the famous countries for load shedding. As an example, people there are kind of like used to blackouts. The official electricity company Eskom has failed to keep the infrastructure in a good condition with old power plants, late repair and overhaul programs and low investments. Based on the official Eskom reports and media like Times Live and African Exponent, the blackouts have caused billions of dollars of loss to the country. Even in 2025, they had a couple of months with no blackouts, but the experts say that this state is still fragile. Next country is India. Based on the report from Central Electricity Authority of India and analysis published by sources like Tech Central, India is facing up to 14 gigawatts of shortage in some seasons. What is the main reason? Well, reduction in hydroelectric power generation due to the drought, considerable rise in power consumption due to the population increase and industry growth. As you can see, even a country in that scale has shortage of electricity in peak consumption hours. Zambia. This is one of the countries which is extremely reliant to hydroelectric power plants, and approximately 80% of the country's power comes from directly hydroelectric power plants. Based on the World Bank and the Parliament of Zambia, in 2024, the water surface behind the dams have been lowered by a major amount due to the drought. What's the result? Some areas have electricity for only 3 to 5 hours daily. Government is applying scheduled blackouts for load management, and that's the big problem for all the citizens. Next one is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is very similar to Zambia. This country is also reliant on the dams and hydroelectric power plants, and mainly this country is reliant on Kariba Dam and hydroelectric power plant. Based on the Lusaka Times and local African media, the reduction in dam water level has caused major reduction in electricity generation. This country is also experiencing daily blackouts. Next one is Ecuador. In South America, Ecuador faced serious power crisis in 2024. Based on the official reports and sources like Wiki and also international media, in some periods, people had up to 14 hours of blackouts. The reason behind this was high dependency of power grid to hydroelectric plants, drought, and lack of new power plant development to increase country's capacity to generate and provide power. Cuba. Cuba is one of the classic examples of complete grid failure. Based on AP News and official reports, this country had multiple major general blackouts in 2024 and 2025. The reasons behind it were lack of fuel, extreme power plant degradation, and lack of spare parts. The blackouts have affected water, food, hospitals, and all people's lives directly. Next one is Lebanon. Lebanon is a very bitter example. According to official reports, since August 2024, the Lebanese national power grid has effectively collapsed. Fuel has run out, power plants have shut down, and people are living almost without electricity. The national power supply system has practically fallen apart. Venezuela is also one of the examples of widespread power outages. Heavy reliance on hydroelectric dam and mismanagement, that's the big problem. According to reports in some states, power outages have been reported for up to 20 hours per day. Although there has been changes in a couple of months, but there has been no impact on the energy problem of Venezuela that we hope it will be over soon. Iran, as the last one we're going to talk about, Iran's power shortage problem is a mixed issue from all types of energy. The lack of development on gas industry and drought plus lack of effective management in water systems has caused the electricity generation to fall into crisis. The crisis caused power shortage, or what officials said unbalance, from 2022 to 2025, growing every year, and in 2024 and 2025 caused major blackouts and scheduled load shedding daily up to 2 times per day for 2 hours. Based on official reports and other media, in 2025, the government has put a lot of investment in solar energy and filled considerable amount of unbalance, thus lowering the blackouts. Okay, let's talk about the difference between overload and shortage before we talk about the countries that have overload problem. Electricity overload is simple definition in comparison with the shortage is that the amount of electricity you are generating is much, much more than the amount of consumption of the whole grid. You may be saying that it's a good thing to have much more electricity than the amount we're consuming, but in the grid stability standards and also from the scientific perspective, the difference between the amount you're generating and the amount you're consuming must be a meaningful difference, and that affects directly the whole grid stability. And also from the energy market perspective, it's also a bad thing to have this much difference. Every power plant has a contract with the utility company they're working with. And in this contract, the amount of electricity that they have to inject into the power grid is mentioned. So, and also the power plant is counting on the income based on the electricity they're injecting into the grid. So governments or utility companies are paying this much of money to power plants, and they need people and consumers to consume it. So in the consumption process, they can bill people and consumers, thus getting paid for the services they're providing to the customers. And as for the terminology's sake, utility companies usually call the power overload the oversupply of the electricity or power. Okay, let's talk about the countries having this problem or oversupply. Let's start with the poster child for this modern energy dilemma, Germany. Germany has committed deeply into its energy transition. On a bright, blustery Sunday afternoon, its vast wind farms in north and solar panels across the country can generate more electricity than the nation actually is using at the moment. And you think, great, free clean power, but here's the catch. That power is mostly generated in the north, while the industrial heartland is in the south. The transmission highways to connect them are congested and still being built. So, what happens? The price of electricity on the wholesale market can literally go negative. Producers have to pay to offload their power. Wind farms are told to shut down, a process called curtailment. They're spinning for nothing. It's a waste of infrastructure and clean energy potential, all because the grid can't absorb and move it in time. Okay, now let's shift hemispheres to Australia and specifically the state of South Australia. This is a case study in what happens at the rooftop level. South Australia has one of the highest rates of rooftop solar penetration in the world. On a perfectly mild sunny day, when no one's running air conditioning, these millions of panels flood the local grid with power. This creates a phenomenon engineers call the duck curve. Net demand, the power that the central grid actually has to provide, plummets to a deep valley during the day, then spikes violently as the sun sets and everyone turns on their lights and TVs. The grid wasn't designed for this. To prevent instability, sometimes the network operator has to remotely switch off people's solar systems or curtail large solar farms. Imagine being told you can't use your own sun. Now for the sheer scale of mismatch, look to China. In its remote northern and western regions, places like Gansu, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia, the government has built wind bases and solar parks of almost unimaginable sizes. These are landscapes dominated by machinery, but the population centers, the megacities that need that power, are over 1,000 miles away on the coast. The transmission lines, those ultra high voltage marvels, are lagging behind the construction of generators. So, in these windy, sunny provinces, curtailment rates have been brutally high. They build up, but they can't send it. It's an infrastructure gap written in gigawatts. And believe me, that is a large amount of power. And we can't actually overlook the most vulnerable systems. Small island grids. Nations in the Caribbean and in the Pacific are investing in solar to reduce their crippling dependence on imported diesel. But here's an irony. On a small island grid, you need a certain number of traditional spinning generators, that's often those very diesel engines, to be online just to maintain the grid's stability, its frequency and voltage. They provide the inertia, the electrical glue. So they're needed actually. In fact, that many people say all around the world, we don't need the fossil fuels and let's just move to the solar systems. But we are not that developed in the world to completely put aside all the fossil fuels. And that's the part when the fossil fuels come to our help for the grid stability. So at midday, with the solar farm at peak output, the island might only need 10 megawatts. But for stability, it needs 5 megawatts coming from a spinning diesel generator. That means 5 megawatts of solar has to be curtailed to avoid overloading the system. They're burning expensive fuel while turning away free sunlight. It's an ultimate lose-lose born from the technical limits of a small grid. So why this oversupply is so dangerous? Electricity isn't like water. You cannot just spill it into a reservoir and keep it somewhere. The grid is an instant matching machine. If you push in vastly more power than is being drawn out, the fundamental frequency of the grid, which is 50 and or 60 hertz based on the country and the grid, starts to rise. That's a very dangerous thing. Go too far outside the safe band, and the protective systems kick in. Power plants automatically disconnect and to protect themselves. That can trigger a cascading failure, a blackout that rolls across regions. Too much of a good thing can collapse the whole system. The solutions are where the future of the grid is being written. First, bigger, smarter transmission lines, building the long distance highways to move power from where it's generated to where it's needed. Second, storage. Enormous grid scale batteries, like south of Australia's famous big battery, can soak up excess solar in the afternoon and release it at night, shaving the peak off that dot curve. Third, flexible demand, encouraging smart charging for electric vehicles at midday, or having industries that can ramp up their consumption when power is cheap and abundant. So, back to what we were talking, which countries have the overload or oversupply problem? And we talked about Germany with its renewable ambitions outpacing its grid, Australia wrestling with the rooftop revolution, China, where generation build out has sprinted ahead of transmission, and countless island nations caught between a diesel past and a solar future. They are not suffering from abundance. They are experiencing growing pains of global energy system rewriting its own rules. There are real world labs showing us that the challenge of our century isn't just making clean power or generating more electricity. It's building a smart grid, a grid smart enough and flexible enough to use it. Okay, so the core question is, what's the real solution to the shortage or oversupply? This is where the conversation gets serious. We essentially have three paths. Option 1, just build more generation. Building more power plants, coal, gas, or solar farms. Okay, it's good, but the problems are immediate. It's time consuming, it requires massive capital investments, and it can take 5 to 10 years from planning to completion. So, what about today's crisis? We need answers now. Uh, Option 2, just control the demand. What does that mean? Tiered pricing to penalize high usage, restrictions for heavy industries, forcing them to power down, smart rolling blackouts, load shedding, it's called, as we said earlier, and public campaigns for conservation and culture shifting. This approach can yield faster results, but it carries a heavy cost: social dissatisfaction, economic disruption, and political risk. It's a reactive, often painful fix. Okay, option 3, real solution: doing both and adding a third dimension to it. The hard truth is this: No country has saved its grid by focusing on just production or just consumption control. The successful ones, the ones with resilient modern systems, do three things in concert. First, they invest in diversified, flexible generation. This solves for both shortage and oversupply. For shortages, you need a diverse mixed renewables plus fast ramping gas turbines or hydropower for when the sun doesn't shine or wind doesn't blow. For oversupply, you need generators that can scale down quickly. You prioritize turning off the most expensive or flexible sources like natural gas before you curtail free solar and wind. Diversity is your actually toolkit. Second, they build a smart adaptive grid. This is the nervous system. For shortages, a smart grid can perform surgical load shedding, protecting critical hospitals and infrastructure while minimizing disruption. It can automatically trigger demand response from big industrial users. For oversupply, a smart grid is the highway system we talked about. It moves excess power from sunny regions to cloudy ones, from windy plains to calm cities. Storage. This is a game changer. When we talk of storage, we mean grid scale batteries or pumped hydros. Think of storage as grid's shock absorber and battery pack. During a shortage, storage dispatches power in milliseconds to fill gaps and prevent blackouts. During an oversupply, storage soaks up the excess. It charges on cheap, abundant midday solar and saves it from the evening peak. It turns a problematic glut into valuable reserve. It's the ultimate flexibility tool. Third solution, they cultivate an informed and responsive demand side. This goes beyond just telling people to turn off lights. It's about making demand flexible. With smart meters and real-time pricing, you can incentivize people to run washing machines or charge electric cars when power is abundant and cheap. You can also incentivize them to reduce the use during the critical peak times. And this solves the shortages. You turn millions of consumers from passive users into active grid partners. So the real solution isn't the choice just between building more or using less. It's an integrated three-pillar strategy: diversified and flexible generation, a smart and connected grid with massive storage, and the third one, an engaged and flexible demand side. Countries that are succeeding, like the countries like Australia, Europe, and leading regions in the US, are investing aggressively in all these three solutions. They understand that the modern grid isn't a one-way street from producer to customer. It's a dynamic intelligence network that must balance itself across every second in both feast and famine. It's the only way to keep the lights on steadily in the 21st century. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Here on Mr. Meter, our mission is to illuminate the systems that power our world. We talk about electricity itself, how it's generated by everything from spinning turbines to silent solar panels. We trace its journey across vast transmission and distribution grids, the hidden circulatory system of modern civilization. We explore the future of power grids, from smart tech to revolutionary storage. We look at the massive industrial equipment that makes it all possible, and we analyze the real-time crises and the challenges that the grids from Texas to Tehran are facing right now. Our goal is to cut through the noise and provide you with the clear, reliable information and data on these critical topics, to turn the complex into comprehensible. If today's deep dive into grid balance and the global struggle between oversupply and shortage resonated with you, then this podcast is clearly for you. Subscribe to Mr. Meter on YouTube. Hit that follow button so you'll never miss any episode. By subscribing, you're not just getting notifications, you're supporting a deeper understanding of the forces that literally keep the lights on for billions of people. Share this episode with someone who's curious about energy, engineering, or the future of our infrastructure. We built this show for you, the listener who looks at the power line or the light switch and wonders about the story behind it. Thank you very much.